5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
You're listening to the GHT Overland podcast. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on the GHT Overland podcast.
Mega moon.
What's a mega moon?
That's what I thought when I first saw mega moon. I had no idea. It's the idea of visiting multiple countries or even multiple continents. This week's guests kicked it up a notch or three by doing it overlanding style over roughly a year.
I dig it. Super cool.
I know. It's pretty rad. Oh, what do the kids say? Super dope.
Super dope. So let's get right into it. Cory and Brie were a lot of fun to talk with. We think you will really enjoy yet another amazing overlanding couple.
From Seattle, Washington, no less. Welcome and thank you for joining us on the GHT Overland podcast. This is where you get the greatest interviews and insights from overland travelers around the globe, learning from their stories and experiences as we interview overlanders from places like Australia, Africa, the Americas, Portugal, and today, Chile. You will learn the basics to the advanced in overlanding, so buckle up and get ready for a new adventure. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lisa. Today's featured guests are Cory and Brie, who are newlyweds, overlanding from Seattle, Washington on their mega moon. Today, we are humbled to have them join us to learn from their experiences over the last year and hear their stories of overland travel through the Americas.
So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. We are honored that you've taken the time, so thank you so much. If you would, fill us in on any blanks we may have left out in your intro and tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, covered a lot there, but we're on a year-long trip, left back in October, got a couple months left, currently down in Chile, and we're happy to be here.
That's awesome. Now, we say Chile, everybody says Chile. It sounds fancy. Am I completely breaking rules by just saying Chile?
Not so much.
No, I don't think so. I kind of I dabble
wondered.
in all pronunciations. Sometimes I say Chile, sometimes it's Chile, sometimes it's just Chile. I don't know. It's whatever feels right.
How much coffee you've had, right?
Yeah, I'm sure they would correct me here locally, but, it's okay.
Got it. So can you guys describe to us where you're at this morning? Like your location, your surroundings. If you were to step outside right now, what would we see?
Well, we're on this island called Chillaway, and it's off of the coast of Chile, and it's right at the northern kind of part of Patagonia. Looking out the window, we're seeing bunch of ocean, actually. Kind of reminds us of back home. A little bit rainy, a little windy, kind of similar climate to the Northwest there.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. And are you guys in a Airbnb or what's the deal?
Yeah, I was actually going to comment on that. We met a couple other fellow travelers just wandering through, and they've been on the road for over 3 years. They're from Colorado, and we actually met them in northern Chile, but spent the most time with them in Argentina, and they're doing a house sit out here. So And then we met back up with our other friends that we shipped our Ullr on a container with from Panama to Colombia, and Bam Bam Van, and they're from Mexico. And so we met back up with them, and then Just Wandering Through invited us to come hang out here for a couple days. So we actually have a house to chill in, and then the view is like super scenic. It actually reminds me a little bit of Ireland, like super green, like lush, kind of cliff, like dropping into the ocean, and then just a ton of sheep. So kind of a fun place to be. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds really awesome.
So what inspired this mega moon overland travel for you?
Yeah, who came up with that idea? That's awesome.
Yeah. So we bought the four-wheel camper about 3 years ago, and we started doing just trips around home. Did a lot of trips up to local ski hill, things like that, and we just really enjoyed that mode of travel. You know, having a home base, somewhere warm to sleep in, out of the elements. And so, about 2 years ago, we actually flew down and met up with some of our friends, Blake and Tawny. They were doing a trip on Baja, and we really enjoyed our time with them. They had a VW van that they were living in down there. And so did a few days with them, really enjoyed that, and then just kind of progressed from there.
Yeah. And I think for us, like when we got engaged and we were talking about honeymoon, we're big skiers. So skiing down in South America was always kind of this bucket list. We should do it. And it kind of evolved from, instead of going and, for a couple of weeks, to maybe we could spend a few months in South America. And then Cory started doing research. He's really good at researching things, and he found a couple overlander blogs, and it just spiraled into this, wait a minute, we already have the truck and the camper, so we wouldn't have to buy that, and we could totally drive. And we had both been at our like places that we work for about 7 years, and neither of us were necessarily like unhappy and ready to leave, but it just seemed like a nice time to transition into travel for a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really cool. Everything lined up kind of perfectly.
It did. In retrospect, at the time it was challenging to plan it all, and we were nervous to like quit our jobs, but it really did work out. And when we talk about it now, it does seem like it lined up really well.
That's cool. So if you are the planner of the group, did you spend a lot of time planning the trip? And would you recommend spending like either more or less time planning if you were to do it all over again?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did spend quite a bit of time, looking at blogs and, just scouring the internet for different things. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the actual leave time, you're still going to feel unprepared to a certain degree. And so you're just, no matter how much time and energy you put into the planning process, I really do feel that you're going to still feel underprepared. And so there's just so much stuff that you can figure out on the road that, overthinking the planning process wouldn't be my best advice.
Got it. And so can you give us some details on your current vehicle and where the name Ullr came from?
Yeah. So I'll start, and then Cory can fill in all the juicy details. But we have a 2012 Toyota Tacoma, and we have a 2000 four-wheel camper Eagle, which they don't make that model anymore. But and then Ullr. So in the skiing community, Ullr is kind of the god of snow or god of winter, and it's not uncommon to have like Ullr parties in the fall when you're praying for snow and it's early season and you can't wait to get out there. So that's something that like we kind of grew up. Ullr was a household name in our skiing families, right. But we definitely recognize that most people have no clue what Ullr is or how to pronounce it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that we nailed that.
Yeah, you did.
All right, Cory, so what are the juicy details?
Not too much on the juicy side, but I mean, a couple of upgrades that I did just for the camper that I think were really helpful. upgraded the suspension to handle the extra weight of the camper. Did, solar, new fridge, some other things like that, just to get ready for the trip, kind of, and pairing the camper to the truck.
Got it. Okay, cool. So what about your cooking setup? Any recommendations on putting a good, reliable overlanding kitchen together? Understanding that in the four-wheel camper, it's probably all kind of set up, but like, how have you kind of set that up? What would you recommend for people to do?
Yeah, like you said, the four-wheel camper has, a sink and a fridge and the 2-burner stove. We also brought an outdoor cooking setup. We got a table and an outdoor burner that we thought we'd use more, but really we just haven't used that all that much. Mostly do all of our cooking, inside the camper. For whatever reason, it's more of a hassle to take, each piece of food and each cooking utensil out of the camper than it is just to do everything right there. So, and then we have just a small little barbecue setup that we've used just a handful of times for when we want to barbecue, but for the most part, it's all been just right inside the camper there.
And what is that one thing you value the most, either on or in your vehicle?
I think as of lately, it's the heater that we have because it's been pretty cold. It's winter down here, so I've liked having the heater warm the place up right before we go to bed, and then we turn it off so we don't create a bunch of moisture and inhale bad fumes all night. But I personally love having the heater. I don't know. What would you say, Cory?
Yeah, the heater is definitely that's probably our biggest favorite item.
Have you had any like moisture buildup issues lately with that camper?
We do, yeah. It's a constant problem that you kind of have to battle. Okay. With just talking with everybody, though, it sounds like everybody has some condensation stuff. So we'll just have just a hand towel that we'll use to run over all the surfaces in the morning, just to try and gather some of that moisture.
Anything you originally packed that you never used or have removed from your overall setup?
We were talking about this because my parents actually just came down to visit about a month ago, and we sent them home with some stuff. And one of the things that we thought we'd use a ton and then we used like once was our snorkel gear that we brought down. Which I suppose that's couple dependent, but Cory really likes to surf, and I attempted to surf, and most surfing locations don't really coincide with clear water to snorkel in, so we just like never use them.
That's not the first time we've heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
It was kind of interesting. Just there are some different posts on like the Pan American Facebook group and things where people will post, hey, will you list out the top 2 or 3 things that you were most happy that you brought on the trip, and 2 or 3 things that you were least happy with. And so just kind of looking at those lists, I was able to, know that we didn't want probably a Dutch oven or things like that. And so if people want to, check out some of those resources, they can get a better idea of what people use and aren't using on a trip like this.
So what would be like your top 3 things that you would recommend to people?
I'd say a fan.
A fan, for sure, a fan. Well, if you're going to go through Central America, I want a fan. We really loved, and this was actually a mixed review item on the Pan American, like kind of when people would say what they liked or didn't like. We had a magic bullet until we fried it in Peru, but we loved it because we would make smoothies every morning in South America. Like the fruit there is so good, and it was a way to kind of feel healthy and like we were getting some good stuff in our body before we had fish tacos. So we used the magic bullet a lot. And then as it got colder, I used it to make like soups and hummus and things like that. So that was a pretty money bring. What else?
Maybe like the shiwi?
I don't think so, but maybe. Yeah, we don't have a toilet in the camper, so Cory like gifted me a shiwi before we left, which is probably the weirdest gift I've ever received. Didn't really know what to do with it, but it has come in handy actually quite a bit to be able to like indiscreetly go to the bathroom or discreetly, excuse me, go to the bathroom when you're in places where they don't have public facilities.
Yeah, that's really good. Cool.
Oh, what a guy.
Well,
Yeah,
get
so
married,
sweet.
new wife, got to take care of her.
Absolutely.
So what are your current top 2 or 3 destinations that you went to, along with a little detail on what made them so special?
I think, just starting out the trip in Baja. Baja's, such a magical place. Beautiful beaches, amazing food. It really is just the best introduction to this trip. It's a nice, easy transition going from the U.S. into seemingly, at the time, scary Mexico. And we really enjoyed our time there.
Yeah, we love Baja for sure. And I think it's like you don't really know what you have until you leave and start going to other places. And you're like, wow, okay, that really was a special place. We really loved Costa Rica, which we didn't necessarily think we would. We knew that we'd like it, but as an overlanding spot, it's definitely probably one of the more touristy places and expensive relative to other places, which those definitely were kind of the cons of being there. But just as far as like scenery and a country, it's so beautiful. And within just like 2 hours, you can go from super hot beach, beautiful surfing to lush rainforest with amazing wildlife, and you can just kind of get the mix in between. So every time we'd go down to the beach, we'd stay for a week or maybe 2, get super hot and ready for cooler temps, and then just head into the mountains and cool down for a week or 2, and then kind of zigzag all the way down. So that was a highlight for sure for us.
I'm drooling.
The mountains or the beach?
Both.
That's awesome.
And I think more recently, we've really enjoyed our time in Argentina. That's just a really beautiful country. Really enjoyed the mountains there. The people are great. And specifically right now, their economy is kind of not doing so hot, but which means for a really strong U.S. dollar. And so things are really cheap over there right now. Really good wine and meat and cheese and the food and everything over there. We really enjoyed our time over there.
Yeah.
What's a favorite meal or recipe you enjoy while traveling?
I do most of the cooking, so I suppose this is my question. When we were, it kind of depends what country you're in because groceries can be pretty limited. So I think overlanding has been a really good experience for me in terms of cooking and being more creative and trying new things. And when you meet other overlanders, it's usually something I ask them, like, okay, what's your top 1 or 2 go-to meals, and get new ideas that way. But like in Central America, it was really hard to find really fresh, good produce for the most part, or just green stuff. But you were pretty much guaranteed to always find like a tomato and avocado and onion. And so we would do a lot of like just tomato, avocado, balsamic, like salad bowls and a lot of grilled veggies with quinoa or rice. And then more recently, I've been really getting into making some soups, which have been nice to be able to do it all in one pot. And on a cold day, the soup tastes so good. So that's something I've been into recently.
I'm
Too bad they
still
don't have
drooling.
the magic bullet. I bet that makes it a lot easier.
Lisa, come on down. You're welcome anytime.
Oh my gosh. I want to go.
You're not going anywhere without me.
How do you generally do your laundry on the road?
For laundry, we primarily just use laundry services. Go to the laundromat, drop off your stuff, get it back a day or 2 later, cleaned and folded. It's hasn't really been much of an issue. You can find lots of laundromats on iOverlander or just with a standard Google search. One piece of advice would be to make sure that they're going to have it done prior to when you leave. From time to time, we've had our laundry kind of get stuck and kind of hold us back a little bit. So just making sure that you have a set time when it'll be done.
Yeah, that's good advice. What's the cost to have that done on like average? What do you expect?
I'd say so we probably do laundry every 2 weeks, and it's anywhere from 10 to 15 US dollars, I'd say, on average.
It was cheaper. It was cheaper in Central America, it seems like, and then more recently it's been a little bit pricier, but yeah, we usually bring like at least 2 or 3 full loads in, especially with ski gear. We're like doing a lot of laundry, and they wash it and fold it and give it to you in a nice little package. So yeah, it hasn't been, we think that's affordable for what we're getting.
Hygiene. Do you have a shower and toilet setup, or what's your recommendation for keeping it simple and hygienic?
So we don't have a toilet, unfortunately, but we've been able to make that do. Brie has the Chillaway, and then I can pee standing up, so that's good. And then for number 2 situations, we usually try and find a restaurant if we're at a hostel, or sometimes just got the shovel in a hole. And in terms of a shower, we had a bag shower that we were using. We didn't use it all that much, and now that we're down in this kind of colder area of the world, we haven't been using that bag shower. But usually can find a shower either at a hostel or places like that.
Yeah, we've had some really creative places. Like when we were staying in Colombia, we were just parked on the street next to a park with some other overlanders, and there was this arepa restaurant that was delicious, and they also happened to have a shower, so they would let you use the shower, but they didn't open until 4, so we'd be like parked across the street just like waiting for them to open the door. And then yeah, but people are really actually like very generous with letting you use their bathrooms and showers.
That's interesting. So a restaurant with a shower, do they do that just because they have so many travelers, overlanders coming through?
I don't know if that's why they built it, because I think their house was like above the restaurant, or there were like apartments.
Oh, so maybe that's just
yeah, but certainly I think that it's a really popular place for overlanders to park, because it's a safe neighborhood and it's right by a park and there's a grocery store right there, so it's kind of like a perfect street parking spot. So I think they probably see quite a few overlanders roll through there.
That's interesting. So tell us about the number 1 biggest challenge you've had to overcome on the road.
I think for me, I broke my leg a few months back. So that was quite a challenge. It was back in February. We had flown home just to visit family for a week and a half or so. And on the day before we were supposed to fly back, I was skiing and I hit a tree, broke my leg. And so that added about a week to the stay back home. And then obviously traveling with a broken leg presents its own challenges. But I'd say we still made the most of it. But in terms of kind of the biggest challenge, I'd say that was probably it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, that was hard because we're pretty active people, and a lot of what we like to do is going on hikes, and he likes to surf, and obviously we're skiing now. And so when he broke his leg, he didn't have a cast because they put just a rod in his leg, but he was on crutches, and he couldn't really walk necessarily for months. So it really kind of changed our activities and what we were capable of doing. So that was challenging. And then I would add, I think for me, one of the biggest challenges starting, and we've definitely gotten in a rhythm now, but for us, we worked busy jobs and had social lives, and the time that we spent probably just us two was way less than we thought it was. And then you go from having all this social interaction at work and through your friends to we spend 24/7 together in a car sharing the same experiences. So there's not always something new to talk about. I think for me, it was like learning how to be okay with silence and fulfill myself like socially beyond just relying on Cory for that. So that was definitely a challenge. Like, okay, we went from like spending time together, of course, but this is like really dedicated time. And so just navigating that was tough at first.
Any thoughts, Brie, or recommendations that you would give other people as a couple that's traveling to make sure either you get that alone time, or you've got that break in between each other, or just staring at each other 24/7?
Yeah, I think it's probably, each couple has to kind of find their own way, but I think for us, it's one, just being super honest with each other and just saying like, okay, you are annoying me right now and I need space, and that's okay. Or, I'm frustrated, and you just kind of have to like spit out what you're thinking. You can't really play games of, I'm going to like give him the silent treatment because you're just in the car together. So I think learning to just be like super honest and transparent with how you're feeling helps a lot. But also it's okay to say I need space, and it's okay to say, like, hey, you go surf for a couple hours. I'm going to stay here and read a book or journal or do whatever it is that I need to do, or go on a walk. And I think just having kind of those moments to yourself help. And then also just calling friends. Like, there'd be times where we wouldn't have Wi-Fi or service for a while, and I would just communicate like, I'm feeling like I need to call my family or my friends. Like, can we within the next couple of days make that happen? And that would always help too, just like talking with people back home.
Got it. And Cory, from the man's perspective, what insights do you have?
I'd say just kind of building off of what Brie said, just knowing how you're feeling, and then, expressing that, and then, just taking the time for yourself. That's so important. And especially when you're living in such tight quarters, find those opportunities for, some alone time is super healthy.
Yeah. Surfing.
Exactly.
And I'd add too, like, Cory's really good about, because I would say he's the driver behind most of the adventure things we do. And I'm usually a willing participant, but every now and then he'll have some crazy idea of some ski tour he wants to do, or some hike that doesn't sound that awesome. And so he's really good about recognizing, okay, like, she's going to hang in there and do this for me, which means she'll probably want to go do XYZ, which for me is usually like spa days are really nice and they're cheap in America. So something like that, like kind of finding that balance and making sure everyone's needs are being met and you're both doing activities that you enjoy.
Yeah, there you go. That's marriage. That's quite a first year for you guys.
Yeah, we joke that we condense like 5 years of marriage into one.
Yeah, I would say maybe even more, but that's good. So border crossings, what tips do you have in preparing for them?
Yeah, so we'll end up doing a decent amount of research kind of just prior to each border crossing. We'll typically go on to iOverlander. That's a tremendous resource. Try and look at the most recent posts about kind of what people are experiencing at these different border crossings. Sometimes we may even go, check out the Pan Am Facebook group, see if there's any extra details there. Just kind of keep an eye on things if there are any weird things coming up for the borders is kind of how we get ready for those for the most part.
Yeah. And I think too, we'll text or WhatsApp other overlanders that we know have gone through that border, just because they probably have the most recent feedback to understand. And I think for us, it's been really, really helpful to just make sure you have all your paperwork like ahead of time. There's a bunch of like weird little quirks that sometimes you need like 5 copies of this document and you're not really sure why, and they maybe don't even need any of them when you actually go through, but they might want them, so you should probably have it anyways. So just making sure that you kind of have what you think they might ask for. And then we've found a lot of success in getting to the border like early that day in the morning. If we have heard it's kind of a more challenging one, they just seem to be less busy, and they've been like fairly easy to go through that way.
Okay. Any specific border experiences that stand out to you that we could learn from?
Yeah. We had, I think recently in Bolivia when we were exiting and we were going into Chile, we had read on iOverlander that they try to charge you an exit tax, which is a made up thing. And so people had said, be prepared. They might ask you for that. And sure enough, the guy did. And I asked him why. And he kind of just like randomly pointed around the room. Like, I don't know what he was pointing at, but to try to make it seem like it was official. And I just said no. And he handed us our stamped passports back anyway. So that worked. But just had we not read that, we probably would have just paid it because it was only a couple bucks. And then, in Nicaragua, you're supposed to fill out a form like 7 days in advance to cross that border, which we didn't know about. And so we didn't have it. And we had to kind of wait there a couple hours and go back and forth. And then that's one too that we had read. Nicaragua doesn't allow drones, and we have a drone. So we were kind of nervous about that, but we just chose to hide it really well. And then it actually never ended up being an issue. They didn't even ask us questions about it. And they didn't search our vehicle, which we've had friends where they have searched the vehicle and asked lots of questions about it. So I think we were just lucky.
From your experience and what you've learned as you've gone through the Americas, are there any specific safety planning that you guys do or tips you can provide on safety and security as you're traveling?
Yeah, definitely. This is definitely a big one, and I know it's on a lot of people's minds. For safety, I mean, we often take a look at iOverlander, try and take a look at some of the most recent posts about people, either if there's any, hazards that are marked kind of within the area of people, say, getting robbed or, getting mugged or anything of that nature. So being cognizant of those points on iOverlander and trying to determine whether or not we feel it's a safe area or not. And then also taking a look at the campsites to just kind of get a feel for if people are feeling safe in the area, things like that. And so we're often pretty careful about the types of places that we'll sleep. With that regard, we will also make sure that we have everything locked. When we go to sleep, we always lock our door into the camper at night, always lock the truck. I have some pepper spray that I have kind of near the bed, as well as right in the driver's side door, just in case. Haven't had any situation where we've had to use anything like that, but it never hurts to be prepared for those types of scenarios.
Yeah, and I would add, using a great deal of common sense goes a long way. And so there's definitely been a few instances where places we wanted to visit just weren't probably the best idea to go based on things that we had seen on iOverlander about recent robberies, or not necessarily even recent, but just kind of historical, people have been robbed. Or I think talking to locals is a really good resource. They know what's going on. You have to be a little bit careful because they definitely have a tendency to think any border that they're neighboring is more dangerous than their own country. So if you're like, okay, I'm going to this next country, they're like, oh gosh, don't go there, it's really dangerous. And we just kind of picked up on that being a theme along the way. But they usually can tell you if a road is like safe to travel or not. There's some spots too, like I remember being in Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, and there's a specific stretch of road that is kind of notorious for robberies, but oftentimes the local police will escort you. So there's resources out there to help you. And then I think the other like huge thing is just not driving at night. And more times than not, it's just so you don't fall in a pothole or hit livestock. But I also think that it's helpful, like if there is something sketchy that's about to happen, I think just driving during the day can help eliminate some of that.
Okay, cool. And how do you make sure that you understand what the local rules and laws and regulations are and you don't get yourselves into a jam? Specifically, you had mentioned if you've got a drone, you want to get some really awesome aerial shots. How are you making sure that you're following all the rules and, like I said, you don't get yourself into a jam? From an epic ski trip idea in South America to a year-long overlanding trip from Seattle to South America is a heck of a transition, is what I say.
Yeah. A whole year-long honeymoon? No kidding. So awesome.
Yeah, they came up with a really great idea. That's pretty cool. And we learned about the god of winter, Ullr, and I totally thought it was going to be a reference to Ferris Bueller's day off.
Okay, that ages us.
Okay, cancel that. I totally knew Ullr. I didn't. But we learned about it, so it was a good education and super interesting. And then, so snorkeling gear might be one of those things you want to take a double consideration on before packing. I think this is like the third or fourth time we've heard somebody packed all that snorkeling gear and kind of shipped it back home.
Shipped it back home. But legit fan, non-negotiable.
Legit fans?
Yeah.
Oh, like a fan, like a zzz fan?
Yep.
Oh, boy. You in Central America right now? You need 6 fans.
Bring on the 6 fans and a drink and I'll be happy.
Solid thoughts on overlanding with your spouse, getting alone time, honest communication.
And spa days. Oh, yeah.
I actually never thought about stopping for spa days during an overlanding trip.
Oh, I'm sure it would have come to my mind. It might have taken some time, but now it's right there up front.
Probably because I'm not a spa diva.
No, you're not.
Then good info on insurance, border crossings, and keeping safety top of mind. Really great information. Next week, we get into the vital details from Cory and Brie on staying in compliance, whether to fly that drone or not to fly. We go deep into finance recommendations and enjoy a few more overlanding stories from the road.
Remember, it's a good idea to visit the show notes page on our website at ghtoverland.com/podcasts. Select the Ullr Goes South episode. All the details and helpful links are already there for you.
A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. Your support of the podcast truly does mean the world to us. If you'd like to help support the show and get a t-shirt, a coffee mug that doubles as a sweet GNT mug at night, take a look at the options while you're there. If you'd like, you can send your questions, suggestions, and feedback to ghtoverlandpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love it if you'd connect with us on the social medias at ghtoverland. Be sure to share this episode with your friends who enjoy travel and adventure. Overlanding travel is all about meeting new friends, seeing the most amazing places on Earth, and of course, new food and new drinks.
We'd greatly appreciate your time of a quick rate and review of the GHT Overland podcast. It actually does make a ginormous difference for us to show up on all the podcast platforms.
Truth.
Keep those positive thoughts and prayers going out to Mark and Jolie.
Absolutely.
Thank you, and we will see you next Thursday for part 2 of the GHT Overland podcast with Cory and Brie of Ullr Goes South. Have a great week.